I'm Robert Evans. I'm your host. And today we're going to do a segment on the power of simple. This is one of my favorite segments, and where I teach you how to make your work a little bit more powerful by really doing less. So let's just jump right into it. The power of simple techniques. I already said this, that help you make your images more powerful by doing less. There is no greatness where there is no simplicity. You don't have to listen to the same quote over and over, but it's the second episode. So we're going to have this quote up there. Maybe I'll find some other ones. Maybe I'll get rid of it, whatever. So as always, hopefully you watched the previous episode where we did patterns, lines, and space. These are the topics that we are going to cover. So today we're going to do depth of field. This is probably one of my favorite power of simple techniques. The definition of depth of field: the range of distance of object in front of an image forming device, such as a camera or a lens, measured along the axis of the device throughout which the image has acceptable sharpness. In layman's simplicity form, depth of field is how much is in focus in the image. If you have a 1.2 lens, then you're going to have a very narrow depth of field. If you have your lens at f8 or f11, everything's going to be in focus from front to back. So let's start off. So the first image that we're going to look at today, this is an image that I took probably 5 or so years ago when Sony launched the A7. And when they do it, they do these press events for the media, the guys that cover cameras and tech guys, and tell you all about the new equipment that comes out. And so I went along as an artisan to sort of help out with the press guys. But I got to take photos anyway myself. So this image was one of the things that they did was where you could drive off-road Jeeps, and we could take pictures of the Jeeps. You could drive in the Jeeps. So I stood around at the different spots and shot the Jeeps coming through the course. So let's look at this. So obviously, you see right away what's in focus is the front of the Jeep, the logo Jeep. You can see that. I wanted to do that. I then wanted to make sure that by shooting it with a shallow depth of field that the foreground was out. I was a little low, so you see there is foreground with the ground. Jeep's in focus. I have him framed to the right third of the image. You can start to see the S-curve of the road. And then, of course, the secondary subjects of this image are the other Jeeps in it. But the one thing about depth of field, and especially using this, is that you can tell a story with one picture. Depth of field really helps you tell a story. So you can look at this image and get like, oh, there's a bunch of Jeeps driving down a dirt road. It tells a little bit of a story. So it's a really powerful way to get your viewer to view what you want them to see. So the gear I use, of course, the Sony A7 because it was the launch. I had the A-mount 85-1.8, which until the G Master came out was my favorite lens. All right, this next image is taken at a wedding. A lot of times I'll shoot some available light. I shoot a lot of available light at receptions, especially with my Sony cameras wide open. And some of it's just to sort of entertain myself, try to get something. But I really like this image. I was photographing the trumpet player and the band with the available light in the room. So as we look at this, the first thing, of course, you're going to see is the fingers. You notice his fingers right away, and then you follow it through to his face. Maybe you come back to center, and you follow it up and down again. But ultimately, you end up on those fingers. So the tip, really, and the obvious, is you put your focus in a shallow depth of field where you want the subject or people to look in your photograph. So this was with the A7S II. The G Master 85-1.4. The next image was a bride, a wedding I did in Santa Barbara many years ago. I believe this is a film image. But basically, I was in the room with her. I wanted to do a few portraits before we went out and do first look. So I had her sit in the chair facing a window. So I'm shooting with the light coming into the room. And the first thing, of course, you notice are those eyes. They're very intense. She's a beautiful bride. Then you kind of come down to her fingers and see her wedding ring. And here's a good example. It might help you tell that this is a bride because you don't really notice that she's wearing anything else bridal. You can't see her dress. I think she had like a spaghetti strap dress. But you do see the ring. The next shot is a headshot I did of an actor. I shoot this boy quite a bit. His wife was actually a friend of mine in high school, and he's been in a ton of things. Great kid, a lot of, not big parts, but bit parts. But so this image, the first thing you see is his eyes. His eyes really jump out. And especially focusing on the left eye, that's so important when you're taking pictures of portrait pictures that you really want the eyes to be sharp. And then the second thing you might notice is his expression. He's got a really great expression. He's the left of the frame, so again, he's not centered. And then the other thing that I did with him is I had him do this, like he's pulling forward, he's holding onto the back of the fence and facing me. And so his body goes out of focus. He's a little bit on the heavier side, so I was trying to thin him out. So this was a good way, impromptu on the fly that I could do that. And again, this was shot with an 85 at 2.0 wide open so that I make sure that I have really shallow depth of field. I'm focusing just on his eye and letting everything land where it lands. This is an image from a reception. Of course, this kind of tells you right away. Again, with depth of field, it tells you the story. You can look at this image right away and you're like, oh, bride and groom listening to a toast at their wedding. So let's look at it. I think the first thing you notice, of course, is the bride and groom, and there are beautiful smiles in their expression. And then you come back maybe to the flowers, and then your eye takes you back in the background, and you notice the guests, and you see the guests smiling and laughing, and then you probably come back to the bride and groom. But again, I'm focusing on them as I should be. It's their wedding, right? But I have included everyone else in the background. But with the shallow depth of field, you kind of tell the whole story. You have the other characters in the image, but they don't stand out. Whereas if I shot this at f8, for instance, everybody would be in the focus in the background and the bride and groom wouldn't pop out of the front of the image. And this image is a portrait that I did. These are kids that I shot for a while. I shoot their Christmas portrait every year for the mom. They're triplets. And it was up in San Francisco in this beautiful outdoor location with these cypress or sequoia trees. I forget what they were. But if you look at this image again, like right away, of course, the first thing you see are the kids. And they stand out and they were walking around. They had to have their sticks. Then you might notice the background. You're like, what is that? Because if you weren't there, you might not make it out. You notice the light because there's all this beautiful light spilling through the trees, but they're in the shade. And that's like the one amazing thing like about shooting Sony and why I love their cameras, especially is the dynamic range and the sensor. Like I can shoot this image and the exposure doesn't blow out in the trees. And even if it does a little bit, you bring it back in Lightroom, Capture One, whatever you use. So that's it. Here's the 6 images: the kids, the trumpet player, the bride, the Jeep, the headshot boy, and the bride and groom. I hope you're liking this. We're going to do many, many more of these. I feel really passionate about this, the power of simple. We're going to cover it. I'm going to keep them quick so that you get quick little lessons. The other thing that you'll be able to do is download these PDFs in the store if you want to use them or see them for any other reason. Of course, we encourage you to watch the episode over and over and over again. Tell your friends. But thank you again for watching another episode of The Power of Simple, and we'll see you next time.